Hello everyone and welcome to episode technically 1 after the last episode was episode 0 of the Computing Basics 101 series I'm running with utilizing Fedora Linux, specifically with the Gnome Desktop environment. We'll get into what desktop environment means a little later when we get more into customization of your overall system, but here I just want to jump right back into the basics of how to use the system compared to attempting to overcomplicate something. I don't want to jump into application management or installation just yet. I don't want to get into file management right now because you need the basics of how do you use your system? How do you move windows around? How do you open something? How do you close something? How do you operate your workspaces? How do you multitask? How do you do all of these basic tasks that are required to do the later parts of the course? So we're going to get started. And the first thing that I want to kind of go back over that we didn't really touch on in the last episode is after we installed our system, you might recall that we went through and we did a quick setup. We went through, we gave it our username, our full name, and our password, but we just kind of left it after we were logged in. What happens if you were to restart your computer? Some of you in between episodes might have already attempted that. And when you restart, I can actually do it right here. And this should continue recording. No, do not do software updates yet. I'm going to do those later. So when this restarts, I should be met with a login screen that might look a little similar to some other systems if you've used something like Mac OS or Windows, where you'll get a little profile, a little user list of different users that have been created on this system. And when you select it, here we go. So we have my name right here with my little headphone icon I set up last time. If I click it once and I have my password, I have changed my password from the last one, so it's not a secure password anymore. It's just ASD for this case. And now I hit enter and it will log me into my system. So if any of you have restarted your system since then, you should now be met with this. Now you know how to log back in if it wasn't obvious. For some people it isn't, and that's okay. What we're going to get into now is I was filming something earlier, so I'm just going to unpin that, ignore that, and we're going to move right into the basics of how this dashboard works. So we looked at settings a little bit last time we got into networks. You should still be connected to your network. We're not going to touch that just yet. We used this little window up in here, this little menu up on the top left, and we're going to look at exactly what this does. It looks small, but actually has quite a bit of functionality hidden behind it. And when you just left click on this little window, if you notice when you hover over it with your mouse, you get a little light gray box around it, a little light gray oval, which indicates that now you're activating a button. You can click on something, and you're going to notice it's going to happen with this middle unit here. We'll kind of look at that a little later, and same with this on the right side, but nothing else on the screen will light up like that. So if I go over here and I left click on this little button, it'll kind of minimize or expand the page depending on how you want to view it, depending on what your perspective of that would be. And we're met with a search bar and this window that appears to be our desktop, something over here, we'll look into that in a little second, and this dock down here at the bottom, which has 4 applications, and this other button, which we'll also look at in a little later. What we're seeing is a minimized version of our desktop, of our workspace, and we're seeing a little quick dock at the bottom of commonly used applications. This is extremely customizable, and we'll look at this in a couple seconds. But first, I just want to get into what the search bar does and how to open something here. It's basically as simple as it might appear. You just left click on something. Let's open Firefox first. You just point on that and left click it. Again, you can notice that little gray oval showing up when you go to click on something. I don't like this start page, so I'm going to change this to DuckDuckGo because that's just a very non-political search engine. Not very many people in the community will argue about utilizing it. It's just straightforward, simple, open source, and secure. So we're just going to switch to this because there's not a lot going on. It's super simple. And now we have Firefox open. If you are not familiar with a standard window manager in something like Windows or Mac OS, then you might not be familiar with how to move around windows. Some people utilizing this might be coming from just a cell phone or just a tablet, and you might not be familiar with how windows work. In this, you can have multiple windows. In most computing systems, you can have multiple windows that will kind of overlap, and we'll look into that in a second here. But basically, if you just use your mouse and you hold left click, and it works the same with a touchpad. With a touchpad, there's usually either physical buttons at the bottom of the touchpad that you can click left and right, or the touchpad will kind of give in the bottom left and bottom right of the touchpad itself, and that can simulate a left click and a right click. There's gestures, but we'll look into those a little later as well when you start getting more into shortcuts and things. So if you hold left click on your mouse or your touchpad and you're on this little top bar up here, I don't think, nope, it doesn't work anywhere else, because some windows it does and some windows it doesn't. But if you click up on this light gray bar at the top, you can just move the window around nice and simply. This allows you to kind of position it right where you want it. Maybe I want it on the right side, and maybe it's a little big. So if you look on these edges and you kind of hover your mouse very carefully, the edge is a little small, but you can find a good spot in there where you have an arrow with a line on the end of it. And at any of the corners, you have a similar thing that is instead pointing into a corner. What happens there is if you go to move it the same way you just move the window with the left mouse, you can adjust the window size really any way you want. Now it's a little bit laggy for me, but that's mostly due to the fact that I'm running this in a virtual machine, and on your system it should be much smoother than that, but the main functionality resides the exact same. So now we see how to resize a window, and if you hold on any of the corners, this really works. You can resize the window from any of the corners, and the corner allows you to adjust it vertically and horizontally at the same time, whereas if you go on any of the just straight sides, anywhere along them, you can adjust only that axis, only on that line, as opposed to having to go left and right as well. And you can go left and right separately. So this gives you a good amount of control on how to narrow down your windows, how to put things right where you want it, and you can really organize your desktop. Let's open something else here. Let's go back up here to this main window on the top left, or if you're starting to want to get into some of the shortcuts a little faster, you can press the Windows key on your keyboard, and that will open it'll open the exact same dock. But now we can see this window is kind of filling this space, which is indicating what window is where. This is indicating that Firefox is open on this workspace. We'll look into workspaces in a second, but let's open a second app. Let's look at our calendar here, which I believe is going to open. Yep, it opens in full screen. Now, this is something we haven't really looked at yet, but if you notice, it's completely covered our Firefox window. This doesn't have that indicator bar at the top. This is a window I believe you can drag from anywhere. Nope, no, you cannot do that. Okay, so Gnome's a little different from what I'm used to. But at this one, it's kind of the same idea. There's a little invisible bar at the top that you can't really see. You can see where these buttons are. That's kind of where that bar would be. You just grab at the top and you pull down, and that will adjust your calendar. And now it is no longer full screen. You can resize however you want. Oh, that one's much smoother on my system. Well then, Firefox just decides to be picky. Yep, it's still picky, but this is nice and smooth. So pick your apps carefully, I suppose. What we can do now is we can resize our calendar app. If you notice that was in full screen, why would that have been? Sometimes you might want to use an application in full screen and you don't need anything else going. Maybe you only are a teacher and you only need to use your browser for things. Maybe you're just a student and living in your browser is good enough. You use things like Google Docs, you just watch YouTube and Netflix, you use your Canvas for school or something where you view your assignments. Maybe you even do Zoom in your browser. That all works just fine. If you do it on Mac or Windows, it all works here with no issues as well. But maybe you want to use this in full screen. Well, you can very simply just double click on this gray bar and it will automatically expand it into a full screen window. Now it's covering everything else. There's nothing, you can't grab any of these edges and adjust anything. It is full screen. The way to pull it back is to just double click again and it will minimize right back to where it was. If I move it over and I double click again, it will expand. I double click and it will go right back to where it was actually sitting, not just in the center of the screen. So now we're able to pick which window we want to be full screen. It works the exact same with the calendar. Again, on that little invisible bar that is just blending in with the rest of it, double click in about the same spot and it will expand. Double click again, it'll go right back to where it was. Another method for doing it, there's really no difference. It's up to you however you want to do this. You can either do that double click, or if you have a mouse or a touchpad, you can just kind of grab it and just drag it up to the top center of the screen and it will expand. And if you grab it and pull down, then you have it in your cursor. So that gives you two alternatives for how you want to resize and position your windows. Let's go back into this little dock because we've mostly looked at the basics of moving and resizing windows. Let's go back into this dashboard, back into this dock here. Now we have these two windows open. Again, this is indicating that we have Firefox and Calendar open on this workspace. But we have this little window over here. What is this thing on the right? If I click on this, then it will move over and all of a sudden we have another desktop screen. If If I click in the center here, it'll kind of focus it, and we can see that there's nothing actually here. I can't do anything. I can't click anything other than this top bar. But also, if we notice, this looks different now, doesn't it? We have a gray circle and a white oval. Let's move back over here to this left. You just click on that or use your Windows key. It loads back into here. Click on this window on the right, or on the left, sorry, and it will move back over. If we refocus this and look at this button up here, now we have a white oval with a gray circle. The oval moved over on whichever window we're focused on. If you watch up here in the top right, in the top left, when I click on this, the oval will move over and the gray circle is now the inactive window. So now that we've kind of looked at what this other workspace on the right is, this is just an extra desktop. It seems we can just open any other window here. We'll come back over here to the right, to the left, where we have both of these windows open. Let's close the calendar app for now, because maybe I want my Firefox open on this window. You know, maybe I want my school stuff over here, for example, and I want to go back to my dashboard and view my calendar on this other screen. If I just click on my calendar, it'll simply open as if I was on the other screen, but now it's separate and the Firefox is not over here. I go back to this dashboard and now I can see several things have changed. One, this widget is now up here indicating 3 screens. 1, 2, 3, so that is a workspace switcher. This button up here is changed now, so now it has 3 bubbles compared to just the 2 we had before, still indicating which one's active. So now we have an inactive one on the right. We have one more workspace over here that's opened. If we come over here and we'll open something like the file suite or the file explorer, it'll open the file explorer. Now we have a 4th bubble. Every time we add a new window, this will end up, let's just click on this one because it's here. Now we have a 5th. So we can have as more or less as many windows as we want here. And if you notice, when I close that, I'm going to go over here and I'm going to close this, this file explorer and watch this widget and watch this right side. That disappears now because it's not needed. This is now our extra desktop, not the one on the right. Awesome. So now that we've kind of learned about how basic desktops work, or workspaces work. So we have this calendar, right, on the second workspace. We have Firefox on the first one. But what if, okay, let me resize Firefox and make it a better size, make it a little smaller, more realistic. Okay, I'm doing something, figure who knows what. I come back over to the second workspace. I want calendar over with Firefox. How can I do that? Really, the easiest way is to just be in this menu, grab and hold it. You can just grab it anywhere because it's not actually interactive when it's in this. I can't click anything in here. You can just grab and hold it and just drop it over there. Now you have a calendar and Firefox on this main screen. So moving things around between screens is actually fairly simple. There's a couple of like duplicate steps for things. Also, it doesn't let you keep a screen in the middle here. If you notice, if I move this to the right, it works for a second. You can see up here and it's on the third one, but as soon as I move over, it goes away. So seeing how workspaces work now, I think that's about everything for that bit, if I remember correctly. Yes. So now let's look into this dashboard now. This little dock. I call it a dock. I think they call it a dash. We have 4 very commonly used apps, but you can actually customize this. If we look on the Show Apps menu here, and you click and you left click on that, it opens a smaller menu and it shows our 2 or however many workspaces there would be along with what windows are on them. Let me demonstrate. If I open Firefox first, right, and have it on the first one, and I go back to Show Apps, it shows that Firefox and whatever's happening on it is on this first screen. So I can actually open things from here, which I'll get into in just a second here. But for right now, it's going to open whatever desktop we're on. So we're on this first workspace. If I go to the show apps, and let's open our LibreOffice Writer, which is our Microsoft Word alternative. If I click on that, it will just open on the first screen automatically. Oh, it opens in full screen. Just drag it down, resize it a bit, put it over where we want it, and boom, now we're here. And that was very simple, but now we have our 4 pinned, which if you notice now there's this little hard to see barrier here because LibreOffice Writer is not pinned. It is just a temporarily opened window compared to Firefox and Calendar, which would be pinned. We can go back here to show apps, and we can also tell that these 4 applications are not in this initial front menu. Let's get rid of something we're probably not going to use that frequently. Let's get rid of software. So let's look at how pinning works. We can right click on software and unpin it. And what that'll do is it'll put it back here and remove it from the dash. if we want to reorganize this a little bit, which we'll get right back into pinning in a second, but if we want to reorganize this a bit, say I wanted to alphabetize these applications, because as you can see, it's clearly not done. Let's move the weather app out of where it is right now, because it's right between C right now. If I just left click and hold as if I was dragging a window, I can now move this app around anywhere I want, and it'll make room for wherever I want to put it. I'm going to put it on the N because it's W. But another thing I can do is, you might have noticed that little window showed up on the right side when I did that. Let's grab some system stuff. Let's take this tour window, because realistically we're not going to use that. And we can just drop it over here on the right, and it'll just make a new page for us. And now we can kind of hide apps away over here. They're not hidden and they're not secure, but it's more just organizing. You can think of it as, it's like having these workspaces up at the top where you can have some things on one and some things on another, and you can just know what's where. Maybe you do video editing and photo editing, and you want all of your creative programs like Photoshop, and maybe you use Lightroom and stuff. I mean, you can't really get Adobe products on here, which is a big limiting factor of Linux. But maybe you wanted some of your more creative apps or something on a second page, so you knew right where everything would be, and all your school apps on another. And maybe if you get into gaming, then you could have all your game stuff on another page, and it allows you to kind of organize. You can also see this little gray window right here, which has the name utilities under it. If you left click on that, it's kind of like a folder. So you can also organize stuff into smaller folders. A lot of these look like they're things that most people will never use, other than maybe the document and image viewers, but those will probably open automatically. That's probably why they have them hidden away automatically. Something else that we could hide away would be help. So we can come over here to the second window, and I can show you how these folders work. If it's very similar to on your phone, if you just drag and hold and you just hover over this, another application, it will make this little window. Oh, it moved me back over. Happened? What happened here? Oh, my whole thing just crashed. Okay, that was weird. I just had a really weird bug. There we go. I'm back. That was a weird bug. But anyway, we have here a little folder with our default installed applications, and we can rename it. So we can call these, we can just call this the junk folder. How about that? We just type that in with this little edit button. We hit enter. It broke again for me for some reason. That's an interesting bug. I'm gonna have to report that. Maybe it's because I have something open and it's not happy. I'm not sure why it would be doing that, but our changes are in fact taking place. This will probably be fixed if this is actually a bug and it's not just my system. Remember, I am in a VM, so I could be getting some weird functionality because of that. Don't take that necessarily to heart. So yeah, we've shown how to kind of reorganize these. We've shown how to put things in folders, and we've shown how to put things on different pages. We can also show how to pin. Let's say I'm going to use we'll use LibreOffice Writer or Calculator. We'll use Calculator because we haven't used it yet. If I want to pin something down to this little dash, down to this little dock, we can just right click on any application we want and just do pin to dash. That's all we need to do. And it'll add it down here. We can then left click and drag it, and we can kind of organize it wherever we want, and we can put it in whatever order we want to, whatever would make more sense for us. Another big benefit to having these two workspaces up here is while we're dragging apps around, we can open things from here as well. So when we were back in this show apps menu, we could click between these workspaces, right? And we could just click on an application, open it there. Well, something we can do here is, because we can't, well, I guess we can, we can click on a workspace and enter it from there, but we can't really select which one's default from here easily. So what we're gonna do is we can just take any of these applications. Let's open a writer, right? And we'll just drag it up into one of these workspaces. Let's open it in the first one. And what it'll do is it will create a window here. We can go back to show apps, and let's open Firefox on the second one. And now we have Firefox here. It's still opening this. So when we get into browsers, we'll look into changing this default thing. That might be next episode, I think. I'm trying to decide what order I want to do things like this in. So we're kind of seeing how window management works on this system, right? We're seeing how to open apps, move apps, organize apps, utilize the workspaces, move windows, resize windows, work between workspaces. Is there anything else? We have the search functionality. Let's use that. So when we're in show apps, remember, like, you can open you can open this expanded menu, right, with your Windows key as a shortcut. So something you can do really quickly is, say I want to open my calculator, but I don't want to, go to the top left and click this button, come down, find calculator, drag it up or put it into my window of wherever I want it. Maybe I want that to be a little faster, right? I can just push my Windows key, it opens that window, and I just start typing, and it will, without having to click the search bar, it will just automatically begin searching. Now we have a system-wide search. This will search for various system, things like characters, things like fonts, things like little, I think it'll do calculations built into this as well. If I remember correctly. Yes, it does. Look at that. It does calculations, and it even gives you the option to copy. So it does some basic functionality built right into this, but it also shows things like possible software downloads. I think it'll show settings as well. If I do display, yep, it'll show some settings here. But what we can do is when we type this in, again, we don't have to click the search bar up here. We can just start typing, and I push enter. It will open the application I gave it. If I want to open Firefox, I don't even have to go down and click on that little icon in the bottom center of the screen. I can just type it in, and it's much faster for some people to just use the Windows key and open up that shortcut and just type in whatever you want. You can just ask the system, give me this thing, and it will give it to you. It's lovely. When we get into the later season the later series of doing the exact same core series, but in KDE, you'll see it gets actually even wider. It gets into the area of you're able to search the internet and things. You're able to search within emails on your system. It gets incredibly in depth of how powerful this search actually becomes. So we're coming to a close. We're almost done. We've looked at workspaces. We've looked at application management. We've looked at utilizing Windows within the system. We've looked at searching and a couple controllable shortcuts that you can get used to easy enough. Let's look at these last two factors here before we sign off, and we call this good. Let's look at this top bit. Remember, anything that has this gray outline around it when you hover on it is interactable. It's a button, it's a menu, it's a something. Let's just left click on this. It's difficult to show because we don't have any notifications here right now, but typically this will show a short list of any notifications. This will include browser notifications, emails, events that are coming up. We'll look at the calendar in a second. It'll show if you have like a messaging application on your computer, something like Discord or Facebook Messenger, it'll show up there. You can turn off do not disturb, you can turn on do not disturb or off do not disturb, which will prevent notifications from showing up. When you do get a notification, if I click off of this, it'll go away. You'll get a notification up here in the top center of the screen. If you're doing something like screen sharing, you're trying to focus on a specific task, that could get distracting, so you want to turn that off. Maybe you're showing someone on your computer something and you don't want an email showing up. There's plenty of reasons for wanting to do not disturb. That's just a one click away and you're fine. We have the calendar on the right, which is incredibly convenient because you can not only just see what day it is, which any calendar you can do, but you can also, if you've signed into if you remember during the setup, the first episode, the 0th episode, we had the option to sign into Google, Nextcloud, or Microsoft accounts. What that will do is when you sign into one of those, it will automatically sync your calendar, and it will show you any events that you have on that day specifically. And you can click on other days here and see what events would also show up. Then you can click on this whatever day, this no events or whatever event would be there, and it'll open the calendar to the general point where you can now add or modify or change or check any events. This isn't really made for editing over here. This is more just meant for general overview of what's happening, and then you can go and quickly edit it. You can add world clocks. I don't think most people is really going to use this. It just opens a setting menu where you can add things, and you can use your generic general like alarms and stopwatch timer, things like what would normally be on your smartphone. That's pretty straightforward for most people. You can select your weather location, so you can get weather updates from this as well. It's all built right into this nice little top front and center effectively widget that's just visible, easy to use, and everything that you're going to need to know about your system or your day is sitting right in one spot. Go over to this right side over here where we are going to come up to a close, and we've used this a little bit when we did our networking and we looked into our power settings, but there's a lot more control available in this area. Some of you might be able to recognize a couple applications or a couple widgets that are in here. Obviously we have power settings, right? We can click on this, and without, it won't do anything. We can see, we can suspend, restart, power off, and log out of our system. Various things we can do there. You can click this little button up here and it'll lock the system for you. And so if you're going to walk away, another shortcut to do that really quick would just be Windows L, the Windows L key combination. You press both of those at the same time, or rather what I usually do is I hold Windows and then push L after the fact. It's not one and then the other. And that's just a quick shortcut. If you're going to get up from your computer or walk away from a bit, you don't want someone messing with it or seeing something show up, you can just quickly lock your system. And then when you come back, you just sign in as if you just restarted. And everything will remain there. Whereas I will warn you, log out is not the same thing. Log out will actually shut down everything on your computer. Like it will close all applications, ask if you want to save something, and then lock your system. So log out is more of I'm packing up for the night or the day or something, but I'm going to leave my computer on. Log out and power off are kind of similar. It's just log out, the computer remains on, just nothing's actually running anymore. So be cautious there. You do actually want lock if you haven't saved anything. I'm going to skip this icon right here for a second. We have a screenshot tool, which is incredibly handy. So if you just click on that, you get this little rectangular window you can drag around. It's simple and straightforward. You just, use a capture button and it'll just take a picture of whatever you have here. You can do the entire screen, which is fairly simple, or you can do a window if I had one of those open. Looks like you can also do video. I've never actually used this. I could see it being used. I don't know how useful it is. I haven't really experimented with it. Feel free to go ahead and experiment. I'm just going to mess with this for a little bit. I'm just going to take a picture of this bubble using the capture button. And now it saves it to the clipboard and also saves it in files. I can click a little shortcut and I can open it. And I can view my picture in a larger image if I need to, which we'll get more into how this application specifically works a little later. And we'll just leave that alone for right now. Let's just close all the windows and reset. Go back up here to the top right widget. So we've looked at power settings, lock, screenshot tool. We have volume here. That's pretty straightforward as to what that is. If you click on this icon on the left, it'll just mute it right away as opposed to having to drag this down, which will do the same thing. You have this arrow on the right, which will open a little menu. You should remember, every time you see an arrow, there's another one in this system, in this operating system, it probably means it's some kind of menu or quick menu, quick attach, something like that. So in this case, it unfolded this menu for networks, and in this case, it will unfold the menu for selecting different sound output devices. If you have like headphones plugged in and you have a monitor with speakers, those will show up here. Actually, I'm pretty sure what it's doing is this one might be my monitor because my monitor has speakers, and this is probably the headphones I'm using right now to record this. So that's what it's giving me, and I could flip between those easily, and then a little shortcut to settings. Most of these arrows will have a shortcut to their settings menu. We've looked at networking. If you click on this first section here, it'll just turn it off. I can just turn off my networking. Just a quick airplane mode basically is what that is. The power mode, you can just left click on this and it will switch around between power modes. For most people, you'll only probably have two between power saver and balanced. Power saver probably won't matter for people on a desktop, but if you're on a laptop and you get low battery, it might be worth it to turn this on. What it'll do is it'll typically do things like turn down the overall screen brightness. It will make the screen timeout a little more aggressive. It might even slow down the actual performance of the system a bit, so things might feel a little more sluggish or a little slower, just marginally. The place I've mostly noticed it hasn't been on my day-to-day stuff on my laptop when I use it. It's more like when I'm doing something kind of intensive, like updating applications or something where it's doing a lot of work all at once very quickly. But just browsing the web and stuff, I never really noticed the difference with power saver. So feel free to just click it on and leave it. You might get more battery life and you might be better off for it. Nightlight, this is actually pretty cool, and dark style is kind of similar. We'll look at dark style in a second, but I want to check out nightlight first, which is basically just an on-off functionality. You can set this up to be a schedule. We'll look in settings in a later episode, but the nightlight will basically dim your screen and kind of make it a bit more of an orangey color as opposed to the blue, because there's some studies that show, which have been argued for a number of years, that blue light's really aggressive and harsh for your eyes, but having a more reddish or orange kind of tint can help. It does help with my eye strain personally. Using nightlight, I use it in all my systems. I would recommend it, although it can affect color accuracy. So if you're doing some kind of color accurate work, I wouldn't suggest it, or I would turn it off for a period of time. Dark style is interesting. Let's open something first. Let's open our calendar, and we'll open our file menu, because these are two very generic GNOME made applications. Some applications might not work with this. I'm just going to warn you. Most of like these, if you notice, they kind of look similar. Like their style is very similar, because these are both made by the people who made this whole desktop that we're using. But things like Firefox, for example, is made by a different company. It's made by a different developer. So if you notice that the style overall is kind of different, that's kind of how you can tell that things are not by the same person. So application support for things like dark mode, which we're about to look at, isn't really guaranteed. Your mileage may vary. But if I click on this dark style button, it will just make everything dark mode, which is very nice for nighttime use. If you're in a dark room, or if you want to, this can sometimes help conserve power on laptops. Because the screen isn't as bright, it's not as full white, and you can just click it again and turn it back off and put everything to white. Some people like light mode better for readability. I understand. I usually prefer just having an option, really. I think we're about good there. I'm not going to look at settings today. I'm going to look at settings in a later episode, probably actually just next episode, because those are going to be wanting to be tweaked by a lot of people. Something we will do though, because some people between episodes are probably going to want to update and utilize their system better. We're going to go down here to show apps, and I'm going to click on this software icon. We've kind of looked at this a couple times, but not very in depth. This is kind of like the app store to your app, to your entire operating system. Most applications that people's going to want to use are probably going to be in here, albeit not all of them. I have seen quite a few that you still have to go on your browser and find. We'll get into more in-depth application management a little later. I'll show how file management can work with it, how you can ensure that you have a secure download and things. But for the most part, this is where you're going to want to find things. When in doubt, just go up here to the search icon and search for whatever you might want. Who knows, it might be in here. But for now, we're going to look at this updates menu, which I have 66 updates available because I last did the install of this yesterday for the previous episode. So quite a few things have updated since then. If I click on this updates menu, I'll see a big long list of all the applications. Oh, and also fonts that have updates. So all these little, these are either applications, like up here, applications. These are probably like codecs and things. Yep, these are all codecs, which are more like system files and system. These are all system things, which you don't really need to worry about. I don't even know what most of these do per se, but this will be something that you're just going to want to check on. And the beauty of using Fedora is it's stable. Updates are usually never a big problem. I'd say just go ahead and update. If there's issues, there are ways to fix it. I highly doubt that there will be issues. There's a big reason I'm using Fedora to teach this. So we're just going to go through and do this restart and update. What it'll do is it'll go through and download, if they're not already downloaded. I'm not sure if it's downloading these automatically or not, or if it's already downloaded them and is just installing. I'm not certain about that, but it doesn't really matter for most people, and you can just hit update and you just wait for it to be done. Oh, there's my restart. Let's just do a restart and install. We'll pause and wait for this, and I'll be back when it's done. Awesome, and we're back. Our system is completely updated. We're logging in now. And if we go back to our software page after this loads in, we should see that there are 0 updates. It loads into our little dashboard. Let's click on show apps, go down here to software, and updates should be empty. Oh, software updates installed. Thanks for letting me know. I can also show you here. I was going to show you earlier with notifications. I didn't have it. You can see how the notifications kind of both pop up. You just saw the one pop up, and you see how this notification's here. You now have a little X that you can close out specific ones if you want, or you can just hit the big old fancy clear all button, and it'll get rid of all your notifications. We will explore how this all works a little later. Look forward to that. I will look forward to seeing you in the second episode, where I believe we're going to be talking about either settings or browsers, or maybe both, depending on how long it takes. So, cheers.